President-elect Trump has pledged to repeal and replace Obamacare, but that's a lot easier said than done. What should we do? Well, I think we should turn to Michael Cannon. He's Cato Institute's Director of Health Policy Studies. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Kennedy.
So, President-elect Trump has talked about keeping that pre-existing condition caveat in the ACA. Can you possibly do that and not have the individual mandate? And what does it do to the health insurance market?
Well, look, the whole point of repealing Obamacare is making coverage so we can enact real reforms that make coverage more secure for people with expensive medical conditions. That's the whole ball game right here. The problem is Obamacare is not doing that. Those provisions that President-elect Trump says he wants to keep, that supposedly ban discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions, don't end discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions. Instead, they are causing a race to the bottom where the coverage that's available for these people continuously degrades year after year. There's a coalition of patient groups that says that this ongoing discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions completely undermines the promise of the ACA. This is not happening in spite of Obamacare. It's happening because of Obamacare. That's why we need to get rid of all of Obamacare, including these supposedly popular provisions, supposedly banning discrimination against patients with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, and that's what Donald Trump says he doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to discriminate against those people. But if you just sort of weed out the bad parts of the ACA that you don't like, you're left with the status quo. That's what Hillary Clinton wanted. You could argue that it was the impending failure of Obamacare that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. Let's say you do what you just suggested. Let's say you scrap the whole thing. What do you do for the 20 million people that have insurance now because of Obamacare? And how can you create a system in a short amount of time that fixes the ailing healthcare market?
Well, the first thing you do is you stop the bleeding. Obamacare and other government failures are exacerbating this problem of pre-existing conditions. So what you want to do is you want to put in place reforms that allow people to have secure access to care when they get sick. And where that was happening was in the individual market that Obamacare pretty much abolished. Yeah. If you allow people to purchase insurance without tax penalties, telling them to buy insurance from an employer or someplace else, allow them to purchase insurance directly from an insurance company, that insurance is more secure, will be more secure than Obamacare, than employer-sponsored insurance. It'll do a better job of what we want to do, which is providing access to care for the sick. Now, again, there are so many people who are victims of Obamacare and other government failures that there's going to have to be some form of transitional assistance for people who are currently in the exchanges and won't be able to afford coverage in a market where Obamacare has been repealed. For those people, we need to provide assistance, but it needs to be transitional and only transitional.
I understand the transition, but was the law designed so there wouldn't be a transition, so there was really no way of taking out major parts of the law and dismantling it, so you had to keep the entire thing or scrap it completely? Was it designed that way?
Well, people who designed this law thought they were designing healthcare nirvana, but what they were actually designing was a three-legged stool. And between the community rating price controls, what we mistakenly call the ban on discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions, and the individual mandate and the subsidies, you have the three legs of that three-legged stool. And what Donald Trump is saying is that he can knock out two of those legs, but the stool will keep standing. That's not how it works. The entire insurance market collapses,
which is why you need to get rid of that. And a unicycle.
Which is why you need to get rid of all of Obamacare. For the vast majority of people in the exchanges, their premiums will fall. The health insurance will become more affordable. It'll become more secure. For the people who are the victims of Obamacare, you need some sort of transitional assistance, like a high-risk pool or giving states more flexibility with their Medicaid funds. And that solves that transitional problem, and we build a health insurance system that provides secure access to care for people.
All right, well, we'll see who's going to take care of the baby. Michael Cannon, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kennedy.
Very good. American healthcare may be racing down the drain, but not in my buoyant party panel. Look who it is tonight. It's Harris Faulkner. She's the anchor of Fox Report and co-host of Outnumbered on the Fox News Channel. Tonight we've also got Observer columnist Malice, North Korean pop culture expert, and Democratic strategist Stephen Sigmund. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks.
It's so nice to have you here. So are you going to admit that it was Obamacare that leveled the fatal blow to Hillary Clinton's presidential aspirations?
It didn't help. I mean, look, I think two things. One, I think politically, actually getting rid of Obamacare will help Democrats in the long run because it's been an enormous albatross around them, for no question. From a policy perspective, I mean, I sort of disagree with your guest that the notion that throwing 20 million people out off of health care and, you know,
I don't think that's what he was saying. I think he's talking about a transitional program.
And people who are actually sick,
yeah,
not being able to get coverage. You know, I think that, you know, you're sort of one cancer diagnosis or traffic accident away from bankruptcy was a gigantic problem that Obamacare did help with.
But you bring up the idea of a traffic accident. And on some level, perhaps every insurance company is not morally obligated to cover every person who comes to them. And someone made the analogy that if you get an offender bender and you don't have insurance, can you then call Geico and say, hey, I wrecked my car, please insure me?
Well, maybe you would have been able to under Hillary Clinton administration. But this was very intentional. When FDR had Social Security passed, he knew it was something that people couldn't repeal. It's not as easy to repeal these laws, not in terms of the actual votes, but in terms of practice, because once you pull them out, you're left with nothing and it becomes a calamity.
Yeah.
So what Trump and the Republicans would have to do is kind of like Indiana Jones. They're going to have to repeal it and replace it at the exact same moment. Otherwise, you get that boulder of economic problems coming down the hall at you. So it's going to be very, very tricky. And this aspect of Obamacare is extremely popular. Although, frankly, just because something's popular, it's disastrous economically.
It is, and it creates what they call a death spiral, where healthcare premiums become so high and cost prohibitive, the market
phone
collapses.
was ringing. It was Harrison Ford. He just loved that reference because he hadn't heard it in 30 years. Has it been that long? Goodness gracious, no. I was taking notes actually as you were interviewing, and as I heard you, Kennedy, you were wondering if whether or not the system were designed to be tinkered with.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that's where Hillary Clinton was trying to go. I mean, look, her husband said on the campaign trail that it was the craziest thing he'd ever seen. He had to walk that back. But the truth was his wife had planned to try to fix it much in the same ways that we may eventually see it fixed anyway. I think this is a great opportunity for Donald Trump to do a double flip back handstand gymnastics move and do a real great bipartisan move here. I mean, he could do it. He may have to. Remember, the IRS is tasked with collecting the revenue stream here.
Yep.
So
that's how they got away with saying the individual mandate was a tax.
See, that's how it's being paid for. So you can't just rip off the Band-Aid. You're going to have to come up with
I'm going to give you each 5 seconds.
This is how you rip off the Band-Aid, by having the Supreme Court do the dirty work for you and having justices that
you have a Republican Congress who didn't repeal it 60 times for nothing.
Yeah.
They don't care about the policy aspect of it. The politics are good for them. They're going to vote to repeal it.
All right. Well, we will see what happens. It's certainly a story that's not going away. And coming up, leftists are enraged that Donald Trump will make former Breitbart chairman Stephen Bannon his chief strategist. But what makes him so controversial? We really don't know that much about him. The party panel returns to discuss his flaws and his assets next. All right, one of President-elect Trump's first appointments was naming former Breitbart News executive Stephen Bannon as his chief strategist. And many analysts credit Bannon with helping Trump stay on message in the home stretch of the campaign, a move which may have helped him win. But critics claim Bannon is a dark cloud in the new administration, accusing him of using Breitbart to spread racist, nationalistic propaganda. The party panel is here to discuss the intrigue. Harris Faulkner, Michael Malice, hello, and Stephen Sigmund. So, Malice, I will start with you because a lot of people on Twitter confuse the alt-right, and Steve Bannon is associated with the alt-right, and libertarianism. What is the difference?
They're next-door neighbors, I hate to tell you. They're both part of this whole new right. But I had a lot of friends after this Bannon thing call me and after leftist friends after histrionics stopped being like, should we be worried about Trump presidency? And if Bannon is there, they should be very worried. Because Bannon is not like a typical Republican. He understands the left, he understands how they think, and he wants to destroy them. He doesn't want bipartisan discourse. He wants these people to be, if not in jail, at least driven out of office, and he's going to be gunning for them, and the first thing he's going to be gunning for, I would bet, is the universities, because that's where the poisoning starts. So he's really shopping for blood.
All right, so do you think that's dangerous to have someone with access to the most powerful person in the federal government, you know, cracking down on universities?
Oh, I think dangerous is the greatest thing ever. I mean, these people are the devil. Their jobs
are not a fan of a safe space?
Their jobs are to proselytize and brainwash young college students and to make them into the shock troops for the progressive militia. They're disgusting people, and they can't compete in the marketplace of ideas, and that's why they have to teach instead of writing books like myself.
God,
wow,
dude,
I wonder how he really feels.
Stephen, you're shaking your head so much. I thought you were.
My father was a college professor for 60 years.
Someone can hear you.
So that's pretty. It's pretty offensive to me. That I gotta tell you. Come on.
Do you need a safe space?
Enough. No, I don't need a safe space. I need somebody who's a little more honest about.
That was very honest.
Honest about thousands of people who work in university environments.
Parasites.
And
villains.
having them all as
You can hand wave all you want. It's the truth.
Give me a break.
Okay, so
the facts.
Steve Bannon. When your chief cheerleaders are the American Nazi Party and David Duke, you have a little bit.
I wouldn't say they're chief cheerleaders.
Sure, the people
you can't control necessarily who endorses you.
In terms of who reacted positively to his appointment, those were the people who reacted positively to his appointment, and everybody else reacted negatively. But look, I don't think it matters to Donald Trump,
Hillary
to his
Clinton
supporters.
was hugging Robert Byrd.
Van Jones's economy.
I don't think it matters to Donald Trump's supporters, right? I mean, it's been very clear that the people who surround him.
Do you think he's dangerous?
Steve Bannon?
Yeah.
I have no idea if he's dangerous. I don't know him. I know his websites. You know.
But he goose steps around the Oval Office with an armband.
His headlines on his website are pretty gross.
Yeah.
But you know, and he also has absolutely no experience to be that close to the President of the United States. But again, his supporters. That's my point. Donald Trump's supporters don't care.
Yeah.
All they want him to do is deliver on his promise
it's no
to have
longer
jobs
supporters. It's about Americans and jobs and prosperity, which would be great for everyone.
And if he doesn't deliver on bringing back manufacturing jobs that have been gone for the last 40 years, he's going to have a problem.
Okay, so Harris, you've got a counterbalance with Reince Priebus, and that seems to be very deliberate.
You do, although I don't think that's the true counterbalance. I mean, there is no love lost between Paul Ryan, the new Speaker of the House, by the way, as of about a few hours before the show tonight. There's no love lost between him and Steve Bannon. So that's really your counterbalance. But I would say this, so that's one fact. I mean, I know you guys are kind of going back emotionally between a lot of things that have been said by Steve Bannon in places where he's stepped in and stepped out of, and his track record as a conservative, so on and so forth. But he is very tightly yoked to the military, and military families across the country will tell you that they have longed for, and even though Michelle Obama did some of this, they've longed for somebody who actually served, as he did as a naval officer, to speak up big and bold. We have a shrinking military. It was one of the things that Donald Trump ran on. This is a good fit for him with Steve Bannon in terms of that, and I think a lot of people don't know that. He also, and I made a note of this, so I'm going to look down, served as a special assistant to the chief of naval operations in the Pentagon. So that's a fact about Bannon that many people don't know. So he's not single-faceted, although he does have, let's just say, a colorful past.
All right, well, and we'll see how this plays out and how important that proximity to power is and what elements of your own personality and experience you bring to the White House. A little later on, Google and Facebook are working to suppress fake news sites. But whether there's a link between fake news and disagreeable facts remains to be seen. And what does this mean for your free speech? The panel returns in a bit, but first, Europeans drawing up defense plans that don't include America. So what could a Trump administration mean for our allies and the current world order? Angela, stay here. All right, Facebook and Twitter catching flack from angry Hillary supporters who say the social media giants pushed the election toward Trump by allowing fake news websites to proliferate in their feeds. Now, both say they plan to crack down on sites that peddle fake news, but who will be in charge of these decisions? Will tech giants be the gatekeepers of free speech, or will they stop there? The party panel returns. It's Harris Faulkner, Michael Malice, and Stephen Sigmund. I will start with you. Are you surprised by the reaction of Google and Facebook saying that they're going to shut down these ads, that perhaps, you know, these fake news sites violated their sacred algorithms? And
well, I'm not sure they actually said they're going to do that. I think they should do it.
Yeah.
And not because I think that they threw the election to anybody or any of those things. I just think that it's a mistake to have the kind of equality in social media feeds between, you know, News USA that's out of Macedonia, some kid making money out of Macedonia, and the Wall Street Journal, right? They are not the same thing. They do not go through any kind of fact-checking, anything, you know, they're fake, right? And to have people have to view them as if they are equal and equally real is problematic, and you end up with kind of a post-fact America.
Aren't people responsible for their
we agree on
discerning at some point?
So maybe you want to not call it a news feed. Maybe you just want to call it an information feed per wherever that information is coming from, whether it be real or fake. You know what? I agree with Kennedy in the fact that people have to grow up and take responsibility. It's part of the reason why we still have jobs. People have said, oh, well, news anchors are going to go by the wayside. No, not as long as vetting is part of the equation. But I will say this. Facebook and algorithm makes me nervous. Remember, they were the ones who put that in charge of making sure that their news feed did not slant against conservatives. So now
they had to have the confab at Facebook.
Yeah. So this was just May of this year. Now they're going to try to fix a problem that is algorithm-based, right, to tell us what is real.
And this is why robots will never take over, Michael Malice.
Well, I think this is a slippery slope, because the first step, which I agree with him completely, is that these people shouldn't be getting ad revenue on behalf of Facebook if they're putting out content that's fraudulent.
Yeah.
However, just in the last 24 hours, Twitter has gone through a purge, and many users that they found objectionable have been driven off the site without warning or reason. And I think the next step after you drive away some of these ridiculous sites is they're going to start driving away sites that they find somehow politically objectionable or unpleasant. And it's going to be some people who shouldn't be on Facebook, but it's also being some gray areas.
Like Milo.
Interesting.
That's a good example.
You know, there are a lot of people who object to Milo being thrown off Twitter, but you still have, you know, which I don't have a problem with people from ISIS using Twitter, because law enforcement will tell you the best way to track those people is to allow them to converse in the open.
The problem with Milo, and I wrote an article about this for The Observer, is they did it in a Stalinist way, because not only was he banned, he was retroactively banned. They took away his archives and things he used to say, and that should be up there at least for posterity, because you could at least point to, like, hey, this person deserved to be kicked off. Look at his history.
Well, not
of what
only
he used to say.
but with what Kennedy's saying with regard to ISIS, those savages, is that they have so many black site capabilities that sometimes you need the archival information to even track to where they may have gone. I mean, it is important to keep some of it up.
But they shouldn't all live. Well, they shouldn't all live side by side, right? I mean, things that
no, you can delineate them differently.
You can call them something.
But that's up to the company. I mean, that is up to the company. And if you're getting all of your news from social media,
which a lot of people are now,
maybe you're a dum-dum.
Oh.
Well, it does.
Well, I think they need to watch Fox, so it's vetted.
Yeah, there is news that is sacred. Unfortunately, people no longer.
The one thing that should come out of this election is everyone should subscribe to a newspaper.
Oh, yeah, get those inky fingers in the morning. Yay, and create all that waste.
Whether they see it on digitally or not.
And then they'll have to
killing trees. The word fascism came back into vogue during the election. Since Donald Trump's victory, fascism has now skyrocketed to the most searched term on the Merriam-Webster dictionary website. Is this because of Trump, or our high school history papers all due this Friday? What do you think? Is there something telling about the constant search for the term fascism?
Well, American socialism is in the fascist form. In the 1920s, there was that song, "You're the Top, You're Mussolini." Mussolini was regarded as the middle of the road between the crazy communists and the failed capitalists. And when you see things like Obama saying, "Yes, we can," that's the fascist principle of the will to power. That's the fascist idea that if we all get together, we can overcome any problem. So Americans don't like that term because of the World War II connotations. But in terms of American socialism, it's very much in the fascist sense, and it's very much in vogue. And in their defense, fascism itself is incoherent.
I never liked Nietzsche. Never even ever.
He wasn't really a fascist, but Mussolini...
He inspired Hitler.
Sure, but so did lots of other people, and you can't really blame him for
I don't like the Übermensch.
Okay, you like the Untermensch? Is that
you know what other words that they were
I like
searching for, though?
Yes.
They were also searching for the meaning of, because they looked at other words that were most searched on election night, deplorable. So if the basket of deplorables did play any sort of role in the election, it's interesting that so many people needed to look
Well,
it up.
I like that people are enjoying the language and they are nurturing it.
Right,
yes.
exactly. I think it's like after Brexit, when the biggest search was what is the European Union. I think they're trying to figure out what.
Well,
this
no,
is.
and because people use that term, but it's like, how long has it existed? What nations are in the EU? What are the member nations?
They're suddenly trying to figure out what fascism is, and hopefully, we never have to find out.
Well, I am being a total fascist now and shutting down the segment because because we have to move on. Stephen
It was
and
fun to be
Michael and
here.
Eric.
Thanks, Kennedy.
Thank you so much for coming by.
Can I touch your glasses on the floor?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll do
You can
that
have
at the
anything
break.
you want. All right, and she'll put it on the Instagrams. Coming up, Donald Trump says he plans to immediately deport up to 3 million illegal immigrants when he assumes office. But could that have some big unseen consequences? Yes, for Belgians. Jonathan Hoenig fills us in moments.